And when I started writing notes down about what is altruism, I started thinking, well, hang on, what is the difference between altruism and generosity? And basically, altruism is the unselfish concern for other people. So it's doing things out of a desire to help. There's no sense of obligation, duty, loyalty, nothing like that out of in terms of altruism compared to generosity. Generosity is the outward giving, which is great. We talk about, and we'll talk a bit more about open-handed generosity, but a lot of times generosity can come with conditions. And I know that there are a lot of situations where generosity, there are no conditions attached, which is fantastic, because that is, you know, like when we're handing over, say we're donating to a cause, or we're giving, you know, money to an example would be a political party. You know, they'll get up and say, well, we'd like to thank people for their generous donation, but the generous donation comes back with conditions. It's, you know, that's why we're fighting with the tobacco companies and the food companies and the meat companies and all that kind of stuff, because a lot of money is given to these people under the name of generosity. So there is good generosity, but there are also generosity that work both ways. And I gave a really good analogy. And I wrote here, if I was to donate, if I had $1 million and I donated it to the Melbourne Buddhist Center, under the condition that we call it Sanghapurna Center of Excellence in the Pursuit of the Attainment to Enlightenment. Sounds really good, doesn't it? It sounds great. But now that is a form of generosity in the sense that I'm giving $1 million to the center, which is great. But in that paragraph that I just mentioned there, I used the word condition twice. So that's what we mean about, you know, unconditional, or in the sense when we talk about altruism, is if an anonymous donor was to give $1 million to the center, or, you know, people, philanthropists who give money, who want to be, well, if they want their name mentioned, that's great, but a lot of them want to remain anonymous. They don't want the big name and title like I gave myself with that example. So going back to altruism, it involves acting out of concern for the well-being of other people or other beings. In many cases, some acts of altruism, people actually lead to jeopardize their own health and well-being, and also their own lives. We often hear of examples on the news of, say, someone jumping into an icy lake to save another person, or even a dog, or someone's put themselves in harm's reach. They approach someone who is in the act of physical violence against someone, and they've put themselves in the middle of that to try and help someone. Like that's an extreme case of altruism, like where you're trying to better someone else and you're risking yourself, but you receive nothing else in return other than a thank you. You know, that is real altruism. But then, as I said, and another one too is people giving money to the arts. You know, we hear often of paintings being bought for multi millions of dollars, only to be put in a gallery for other people to see and enjoy, and just to deepen their knowledge and their love of beauty. That is true. That is altruism. Now, in Buddhism, there are many readings, teachings, doctrines, and practices that show us how altruism works, or how we can cultivate altruism as no conditions are set. Now, I'd just like to read one in particular, and this comes from the Jataka story, and I'm sure that a lot of you have heard this. This was a life of the Buddha, a previous life of the Buddha, and what he's done, he was the son of a king. He became an ascetic, and he gained some disciples. On his walk with his closest disciple, he comes to the edge of a cliff, at the bottom of which there is a starving tigress just about to eat her newborn cubs in desperation. The Bodhisattva tells his disciple to go look for food, and he will stay and try to figure out a way to save her and her young. While his disciple is gone, the Bodhisattva reflects that while his disciple very well may not find food, his own body is just so much flesh, as the tradition states. And by giving it up, he can save the tigress's purity and her cubs' lives. He leaps off the cliff to his death, attracting the tigress's attention with his impact, and she eats his body. In this way, he comes closer to perfecting some of the 10 Buddhist perfections, those of generosity, renunciation, morality, resolution, and equanimity. His disciple returns, having not found food, and upon discovering what the Bodhisattva has done, rejoices in his good deed. He comes back with other disciples, and they in the heavens shower the spot with lotus flowers. So that is an act of ultimate altruism. He gave, Prince Sadhava gave up his life. So how many of us would be willing to do what Prince Sattva had done if the need warranted? We often see now with social media, we see people getting beat up on public transport, or spoken to in a very derogative way, or people getting hurt. And what we see are people just standing there filming them. And there's some type of, there's a sense of either I don't want to get involved, or I'm too scared to get involved. And that's really, really, really sad. And for these brave people sometimes who do stick up for whoever is in need, they don't know what their fate will be. And we're living in a pretty crazy world at the moment with, like lots of drugs and, forget the COVID-19, but the, unemployment, all the stuff that just keeps people in that negative mind state. And I didn't mean to say when I said don't mention COVID-19, that is very serious. And I know that there are a lot of people who are in a state of anxiety and uncertainty. So I don't mean to take that away. But going back to the altruism, the ultimate act of altruism. So this talk just focuses on everyday acts of altruism. So we don't want people getting eaten by tigers or going out and doing crazy things. But how do we cultivate it? How can we cultivate altruism? Well, the good news about leading a more altruistic life is here. It's right in front of us. It all comes from within. I just want to give an example of my own, a bit of a synopsis of my own spiritual life. Started around 10 years ago. And for me, there was a sense that I needed to know more about some of the deeper questions in my life, the meaning, the inquiries of the mind, but also to help with my anxiety and unsatisfactoriness in my life. So it was all about me. It was all about me. I just wanted to be better. It's all about me. So what I did, I enrolled in an Intro to Buddhism course. With that came complementary meditation sits. I didn't know Buddhists meditated, so that's how much I actually knew, other than the concept of Buddhism was really good. So I wanted to take advantage of the free lessons, so off I went. And may I say, the first few weeks were absolute torture. Like having to sit there for 20 minutes. The only time that I would sit down for 20 minutes is when I'm asleep, believe me. So I was like a cat on a hot tin roof. I just could not settle, and the mind was just all over the place. But then slowly, I noticed some profound changes. I started to slow the mind, and I started gaining some awareness, and I could really feel the benefits. So I started becoming a regular at the centre. And for someone who had such a like a moving away to meditate, I actually enrolled in a meditation course. And because the reason being is I come to find later on that as I got more experience, it's a form of spiritual death. What I continue to do now is something that I have a resistance to. The old me would have walked away, but the other me now will just jump in and say, okay, why is it that I don't want to do it? I need to do it. So part of that there was, okay, I need to learn to meditate. And what happened, like a lot of people who come to the centre, and, you know, I had the beginner's mind. And it's like the honeymoon period. And at times I still feel that. And it's just a lovely thing. Everything fell into place. Life was just great. But I also had this sense of knowing that that bubble will burst one day, because, you know, we know that everything is impermanent. So what I tell people, if they're beginning or they're just trying to find or go deeper in their practice, keep going, because that is when we're starting to integrate into our practice. We're starting to transform. And if we can integrate enough, when that bubble does burst, it does burst. I'm not going to say if it bursts, it does burst. Hopefully you'll have enough integration or enough steadiness in yourself to continue with your practice. Because after years of practicing, we all experience ebbs and flows. Sometimes I'm just that, have that much energy and that much inspiration that I live in a double story place. I could probably just jump off and bounce back in the second story. But then there are times when I'm just flat as a tack. And, you know, sometimes when you are flat or down or losing that momentum, it can stay for a while. But just having the faith and the confidence to know that it is there, and you just have to find ways of moving around and just being a bit more creative. And I'll talk about that a little bit more too as we go on. But what I wanted to also just bring people to mind, and I know that a lot of us are regulars and we're quite aware, when we walk into places like the Melbourne Buddhist Center, and, you know, we look there and we go, look how clean the shrine room is, how kept beautifully it is. You have a beautiful rupa, beautiful fresh flowers. We have, you know, the lovely candles. We have the seating arrangements. There are clean cups for us. You go to the toilet's clean. The general cleaning, the common spaces, all that is done by acts of altruism. There are people within, and I'm only just using the Melbourne Buddhist Center, like there are many, many examples everywhere. But behind the scenes, there are many people who give up their time. They don't get paid. They don't stand around waiting for someone to slap them on the back and say thank you. They're doing it because they're creating conditions for us to be able to come in and to practice our spiritual practice, and to go deeper and to deepen our friendships. From the person who greets you at the door, that first smile, being able to go up to an order member and just ask for clarity of something, or making spiritual friends, or, you know, enrolling into a course or a retreat. All the behind the scenes of all the working groups and the teams who just make that happen. Even, you know, when we go home, people go home on a Thursday night and say, look, it's been a big week. There are people that stay behind. People wash cups, people clean up. We do that. That is altruism at work. We don't close the door, or we go out and begrudge someone for not washing their cup or not helping in any way. So, and I'm going to go on about that, about gratitude too. So we just really have to remember what we see, or what happens behind the scenes. So what I'm saying is, altruism is all around us. We don't have to go onto Google and go, how do I learn to be more altruistic? It's there. You know, when we go, a lot of us, I see the faces, a lot of us are in different types of study groups. You know, the study leaders, the people who do a lot of the work, they don't just rock up on an evening and just recite notes. There's a lot of research goes on. There's a lot of fact finding. There's a lot of discussion going on behind the scenes to make sure that it can be as accurate and as factual and fulfilling as it can be. So I thank you for them. So something that we do within Triratna is we practice the Bodhisattva ideal. And basically, the Bodhisattva ideal is for the benefit of all beings. And before, when I was saying about as my practice deepened, it became less of me. I'm not saying there's still some of me here, and at times there's still a lot of me here, but it becomes less of you and you start becoming more outward. And because we have our core practices like the meditation, the mindfulness of breathing, which creates mindfulness, awareness, clarity. And with the metta bhavana, where we learn or where we practice loving kindness and positive emotion. And out of that, empathy arises, compassion arises. So to me, I've always looked at those two practices as it's two sides to one coin. You can't have wisdom without compassion, and you can't have compassion without wisdom. So it's just two sides to a coin. So when a person enters any centre here or Triratna, they have the opportunity to witness altruism by the warm greeting, by the person meeting them through the door, again, or a chat with an order member on clarifying a viewpoint, or just making friends and practicing with like-minded people. So altruism embedded in our movement, firstly by the chanting of the refuges and precepts, the core meditations we practice, the mindfulness of breathing, which helps us create awareness again, and clarity, and the metta bhavana, which helps us to cultivate loving kindness and positive emotion. And with that, for people who continue to practice, our whole life starts to change. If we start to think about practicing seriously, our whole life changes, and it's better. And what it does, it helps us set up an ethical framework, a way in which we want to live our lives with minimum harm and benefit to others. And in that, we grow and develop not only as spiritual practitioners, but as people as a whole. We think we turn 21 and we become adults, and we know we just got to keep growing and learning and developing. So I just want to go through a couple of things here. I'll just go back to the refuges. Like we say, I take refuge in the Buddha. Now, when we say I take refuge now, like now, here, now. That's when we take refuge. It's not like a diet. We don't start it next week. It's like smoking. We don't give up tomorrow, right now. Because the Buddha is the exemplifier, the guide. We take refuge in the Dharma to practice and realize the fundamental import of the Buddha's teachings. And we also take refuge in the Sangha to seek inspiration and guidance to those followers of the Buddha, both past and present, who are more spiritually advanced than oneself. And then when we talk about the 5 precepts, again, this is coming now back to the ethical framework. We're committing to non-harm, and we're practicing loving kindness. We're committing to the non-taking or the not taking of the non-given, but to practice generosity. We're committing to not undertake sexual misconduct, but to endeavour a life of stillness, simplicity and contentment. Committing not to be untruthful and to practice honesty. And also committing not to abuse the mind with intoxicants to allow wisdom to develop. So again, over time, as your mind becomes more concentrated on the cushion, insights will arise, and there tends to be a natural inquiry on the way you live your life, your lifestyle, also your associates, the way you spend your time, your possessions, and the big thing is the way your actions impact on others. And that includes all sentient beings. and the relationships you have with others, and also the consequences of your own actions. Now, some of that stuff there for people who have been practicing for many, many years, also, geez, we hear that. We hear that all the time. But I remember on my ordination retreat, and I happened to spend 3 great months with my good friend, Madhukashin. So you may have heard, I'm sure you would have heard this, Madhukashin, but our course leader kept emphasising the shrine room has no doors. And a lot of times when we go down to the bottom, downstairs in the MBC, we close the doors. We close it because we want quietness and stillness. But that is why Artha Priya is saying about the shrine room has no doors, is we were saying that, okay, let's put down, say if we were to meditate X amount of times during the week for X amount of days, what we need to do, whatever we're cultivating on that cushion, which is basically wisdom and positive emotion, we need to take that outside. And that's why we'd say the shrine room has no doors. So it's no good. And I'm sure that a lot of people have heard the story again now, excuse me if you've heard another version, but I've heard this of many order members, and it always seems to change. So it's like the old Chinese whisper about there was a person of high regard. He may have been someone in a royal family, where he was practicing the Metta Bhavana, and he was deep in his practice, where his servant came out with a tray of tea, and he spilt the tea, and the pot went down and made a big clang. And he got up and beat the servant, and he said to the servant, "Why did you do that? I was trying to practice the Metta Bhavana." So he wasn't really practicing it that well. So that's why we need to maintain that. But as we become more advanced on our spiritual quest, there are many other practices that we can take on that give us the opportunity to become more altruistic. And it also brings to light that the main obstacles that prevent us from achieving this are ourselves. It's purely ourself. It's our ego. And when I say our ego, it's our clinging to things, our attachment to things, our view about certain things. And some of these can actually be blind spots where it may have to be raised for you to be aware. Now, we know in life there are basic things we need to survive, such as food, water, shelter, clothing, health. But there are many, many things that we can either give up completely or cut back. But what does hold us back? And I'm not saying that we need to go away and just renounce our life, but, like money can be an issue for people. People need money to survive. And I totally get that. But then on the other spectrum, you've got people who are just making lots of money, and all they want to do is hang on to that money, and it becomes it becomes a burden on them. And, again, most of us would own a phone. Like, how old are our phones? Do we need to always, and I'm not pinpointing it at every, this is just a generalization, but, do we need the latest smartphone? Do we need the latest earpiece or the latest this or latest that? I had a bit of a, I wouldn't say fallout with someone a few years ago when we were talking about going out. And I said, well, why don't we just eat out, and the money that we'd have spent, we'll just donate it. And he just flipped out. He just thought I was absolutely crazy. And I thought, well, we're going to eat anyway. Like, if it's $100, we can just donate it to a charity. And that didn't go down too well, but we're in two different worlds. So that's, I understand that. Another thing is, I've had many chats with people when they'll say, well, like, I'm not giving money to that guy who's begging. Like, why should I give him money and he's going to go and buy drugs, or he's going to go and buy cigarettes or alcohol? Well, I try and see it, this is my own, I try and see it a different way, where I think to myself, what is it that's brought that person to that place? Like, what suffering has made his life? Because if he's craving, obviously there's an addiction is craving. If that craving is taken away, whatever pain that person's in, I'm not condoning that, you go over there and give him drugs or give him but just to try and understand more why that person is in that situation rather than judging. In the past, we tended to, or it's very easy to judge. So again, it's about that self-clinging. Well, I'm not going to give him $5. Well, maybe I'll give him $5, and whatever he does with that, he does with it. Because to me, that's open-handed generosity. I don't want to say altruism if he's going to go and put some, stick a needle in his arm. I'm not condoning. I'm not wanting him to do that. I'm wanting him to be well. But in the short term, that could be all he can do until things happen. So for me, there are two. I'm going to highlight the two most important things for me, which help me cultivate altruism. The first one is spiritual friendship. And because what we're doing is we're cultivating and deepening our friendships. These are true friendships. I have not experienced true friendship until I came to the, until I come to the Triratna community. I thought I had friends, and I still do have friends out there, but they're nothing, I wouldn't call it true friendship. And that is why, for me, the Sangha Jewel is just so important to me, because the Sangha Jewel to me is altruism at work. We have access to the Dharma. We have a wonderful centre. We have wonderful people there that we can meet and practice with. We have more experienced practitioners here to help and deepen our practice. And with these friendships, it takes the focus off the me and the I and my own negative mental states, my own victim mentality at times, my own self-righteous indignations at times, my skewed views. I've got someone there to call me out. And I don't say call me out in a negative sense. It keeps me honest, so to speak. And these spiritual friends, whether they're horizontal or vertical, they will look after your welfare, and they show concern for you, genuine concern. And one example I'll give is where a couple of years ago I went to Spain for 4 months, and it's going to be great. I was just leaving work, leaving this crazy world. I was just going to go so deep into my practice, and I was just going to come back with this massive aura around me, and just life was going to be so good. And I met my wife in the UK when I come from Spain, she come from Australia, and we got in the hotel room, we started talking. I said, well, how have you been? For the last 4 months, I've had this crazy ride. It's been fantastic. And she told me how much she struggled, especially in the first month. And she really, really struggled. And in our discussions prior to that, we'd never talked about that. I showed her how to do the banking. I showed her, what to do if this happened or what to do that happened. But what really helped me and just gave me so much comfort were the people within our movement, within our order, who looked out for her. People said that they would, and they did. And then, Sam had said to me, I'd gone out with this person for lunch, and then I caught up with this person for coffee, and this person kept ringing me, and this person sent me texts just checking in on me. And I just thought, I don't know how Sam would have coped if she didn't. Like, we've got our own family, but families are different. And for me, I just cannot appreciate that enough. And it's one thing that I'll be really looking out for my brothers and sisters in the future when they go away, to make sure that their dependents and loved ones are just making sure that they're okay, just to let them know that it's okay. And I really, really appreciated that. A true spiritual friend can help allay our fears and anxieties. They can provide words of wisdom or even words to go away and reflect on. And I have an absolutely wonderful relationship with my preceptor, Arunamoan. And I'll go up to him and I'll give him a situation and I'll tell him what I think about it. And he'll just throw something back and I'll go away and I'll think about it. And I'll go, geez, that makes sense. You know, like that makes sense. So it's good calling on, and there are other order members like that you can come to with a certain mindset, and they'll just throw something at you with a different thing and you go, my view was wrong, or my view needs adjusting, or yes, I see what you're saying. And in that way, the reason that works that way too, because they speak truthful, helpful, and they're kindly, and the discussion is harmonious. And when you build real friendship, and I know that, you know, people can have real friendships anywhere, but what happens there becomes a sense of receptivity that you can listen to. And even sometimes it may be a bit like you may feel it's a bit harsh because it's sort of prickled you inside. They're doing it for your own benefit. So it's not like, you know, like most of the time I'd rather listen to my preceptor than say my wife, because my preceptor will say it in a more loving way. So, you know, that's all right. Oh, hang on. Oh, sorry, the wife's still in the room. Sorry, Sam. So, anyway, yeah. So, also too, spiritual friends, we practice generosity. Okay, we give our, you know, we as in all of us, we give our time, experience, advice. We will listen. If you want words of advice, we can offer you words of advice. They will respect your confidentiality. You know, their word and your word, they're serious obligations to each other. There's trust. It's nothing more important. And they will not forsake us when we're in trouble. That's really important. When we're a bit down and out, they're there to sort of give you a bit of a kick up the backside. Come on, mate, stop feeling sorry for yourself. And also too, they are genuinely happy to watch you grow and develop as a person. So it's lovely. So my advice to you, dear friends, is become a friend, a real friend, a spiritual friend, a friend who shares the same path as you. And I know that a lot of you do have those friends and would be able to appreciate what I'm saying. Because if you practice friendliness, you're not only practicing the Dharma, but you're communicating it. And that's what is very important. And the next thing for me that is very important is gratitude. Now, I can only speak of my own life's experience. I know lots of people, you know, like we share the same journey, but we all come from different backgrounds. But, you know, together now we're moving in the same direction. We live in a first world country. You know, we do have the freedom of speech. We have the freedom to choose. We have the freedom to practice the Dharma without any form of retribution. So we're here now, regardless of our backgrounds and our experiences and our conditioning. But for me, you know, every day I try and reflect on something with gratitude. And, you know, this is something that I've spoken to Sam about and myself, because, you know, both of us have had issues within our families, and I'm sure that many of us have. But for me, you know, to be able to express gratitude to my parents for they brought me into this world. So for me being here, there's the opportunity for me to become enlightened or enlightenment. I thank them for that, as well as many, many other things. How fortunate am I, or are we, to have been able to find the Dharma in this life, regardless of our age or background. You know, you might see someone, you know, you meet people and they're like 85 and they go, oh, geez, I wish I found this Dharma 60 years ago. Well, hang on, you have. It's 60 years ago you weren't ready. So you have it now. So, you know, rejoice in that. And hopefully that, you know, we're going to build up in this life enough karma to meet again next life with the Dharma. So, you know, so how fortunate is that? How fortunate in my life am I able to help other beings in terms of my skills, knowledge, experience? I can donate to causes. I can help at the centre. I can help other people. I can do other things. How fortunate am I that I'm able and I have the resources to be able to do that? How fortunate am I to have a supportive wife and a supportive family who don't question, or not so question, is don't begrudge me, fully support me in my quest in living this life. And after all these years, Sam has slowly, by osmosis, has become a Buddhist, which is fantastic. So now she is walking that path. So I think that she's seen that by the positive changes, you know, in my life, which is great. How fortunate am I to be I'm in employment at the moment, and my employment still allows me to meet my obligations to my practice and to the centre and catching up with people. So, you know, for me, in terms of that is really important to me. So whenever it's, wow, you know, poor me, there's no poor me. Like there's worse people off, much worse off. So I need to take advantage of this and be able to help others. And I don't think that I said this, but and for the order members who would know this, that when we take our ordination vow, one of the 4 vows are, for the benefit of all beings, I accept this ordination. And I take that vow seriously. Like, I take vows seriously. Yeah, I want to help. I want to help others, and I want to help more as my working life starts winding down. There are other things I want to do which will be more altruistic, because I feel the need to do that. So for all of us, I just ask, you know, how can we become more altruistic in everyday life? What can we do? And so what we're talking about is how can how can we become more outward and be less of me? And how can we be more other regarding? And just a couple of points that I wrote down there, we can start off in simple steps. You know, again, we all have time. Like a lot of us complain we have no time, but it's about prioritizing our time. There's only 24 hours in a day for all of us. So can we help people out in the time of need? Especially now, you know, can we shopping, paying bills, running errands? Actions when we're at the centre. Can we offer someone a cup of tea? If we see someone, especially a new person that's looking quite uncomfortable, do we go up and introduce ourselves? Can we stay back and help clean up, help rearrange the chairs, so the people that have been there for many hours on that day can go home and just get some sleep and recharge for the next day, where the altruism starts again. We have many people within our Sangha with certain skills. You know, can we help with something? Can we fix the computer? You know, can we help write up a resume? Can we give things away to others? You know, something material, you know, possessions, gifts, just rejoicing in them. You know, can we support? I know what a lot of us do is we will support causes. It could be, you know, against animal cruelty. It could be anti-mining. It could be for the I've gone blank, Sam.
Anything for the environment.
Anything environmental. there are lots of things that we can help with in a cause. Can we offer friendship? Real friendship, as in real communication. Can we listen in a judgmental way, in a non-judgmental way? Sorry, I've been married 32 years. That was that came out wrong. Can we be non-judgmental? Can we practice kindly, loving speech? Even things that I like to do, and there are a few people who are on the end of this, just dropping someone an SMS, just saying, look, thinking of you, wishing you a lovely day. Sometimes it just lifts them up, just showing that you care for them. So there are other practices as we move further on, and the more experienced practitioners that will help us in terms of becoming less of me and more outward. And with that becoming more outward, we do become more altruistic. But also, to one very important gift we can give is fearlessness. And when we talk about fearlessness, is giving caring, honest and objective feedback, helping them when they're in doubt, reassuring them, rejoicing in their merits, just making them feel worthwhile. So I hope I've given you enough information here to be able to be, at least, if not more altruistic, aware of how we can become more altruistic.